I'd like to call to order the Development Review Commission meeting for Monday, May the 20th, 2019. Please call the roll.
Polson.
Here.
Aaron.
Here.
Shear.
Here.
Frankel.
Here.
Arthur.
Here.
Okay, all's present. First up, we have, what we always look forward to, is our council update with Councilor LaMotte.
Good evening. I'm going to skim or water ski over some of these things because it could be here all night if we go through the details. But first on the list is that the D Avenue project is complete. We're going to be officially cutting the ribbon this Wednesday at 4 p.m. We'll have a block party. Everybody's invited to come and see that great project. It's finally done, and it's got so many aspects to it that we can celebrate. So that's coming up real quick. And through May 31st, we are still accepting applications for our boards and commissions. June 8th, the counselors will be interviewing all the folks that have submitted. We've got a lot of good applications, but we need more. We're especially, as you know, looking for professional planners, architects, engineers, designers, real estate folks, developers, or builders to apply for the Development Review Commission and or the Planning Commission. So you have another week, so let's get them in if you would like to serve. We will be reviewing a long list of city manager candidates very soon. We have the deadline of July 1st when the city manager is retired. So we will be narrowing that down and hopefully finding some candidates that will work and fit the profile. We'll be reviewing tomorrow some tree permitting activity, what kind of permitting activity has been going on for the last year. We will be approving or reviewing and approving a contract for construction for Boone's Ferry Road. It's coming in at $21 million. Coming in at kind of the early target, and that will be to finally get this kicked off, which things are going to start up in another month. You'll see a lot of action out there, and it's like the old story, no pain, no gain. There will be pain to get through that corridor, but it will be a beautiful street when we get done. We're looking at acquiring an easement through 2 houses on Furnace Street to finally connect the Riverfront Trail. We bought 1 house and 1 lot. We are now looking at just going for the easement on the next 2. And we'll be reviewing that tomorrow. If we can get that done, we will have a full river trail connection going from Foothills all the way through to George Rogers and beyond. So it's keep the fingers crossed. That's one that we hope to get done soon. We will be going through our 2019 pavement rehab projects and approving a contract at $2.3 million to get our contracts or our paving program up and running for the summer. Those of you that remember all the activity last year, sometimes it was a little distressing getting through, but it was much needed to get our paving program up and running. There are some people that are in the unincorporated area that don't think we do much paving, but when you look at the map from last year and the map from this year, there is a lot of road projects that will be done. We are working on roads and we're moving them forward, so that's good news. We will be formalizing the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force by formalizing the actual application process in the next couple of weeks so that people can apply to be on the task force. The task force mission will be defined and we'll have a very short, like summer timeline for them to complete their work. So that'll be coming up soon and then we'll advertise that. The Alder Creek Canoe and Kayak rental that was at the Tryon Cove Park is being moved down to George Rogers. I think it's a little easier to get into George Rogers and park over there. So folks that were used to renting a canoe or kayak to get on the Willamette River will be able to do it now at George Rogers. So that'll be new. We're going to be looking at the vendor lease and getting that going for the summer. Our LoRa board, Lake Oswego Redevelopment Authority, which the council serves as the members of that, we are going to be looking at a funding approval for City Hall's prep work tomorrow of $8 million that will go towards demolition, prepping, foundation, and also procuring early materials so we can lock down prices. The good news is it's really proceeding a lot faster than most people think. Probably in a month or 2, we will have the buildings next door down, and we're going to really start some site prep work. The Arts Council will be moving the sculptures out of the little park on Evergreen there so that they can put the staging for the contractors, and we'll finally see some action, which will be great. And then last but not least, we'll be looking at a change in the agreement with Block 138, which is Lakeview Village. As you know, about a year or so ago, we allowed a commercial real estate group to go onto State Street. The developer has come back to request the same changes we made for the Windward block, where we will now allow, instead of just retail restaurants but adding in commercial services so they have a better chance in the market to fill those spaces. So they'll be looking at beauty salons, spas, real estate offices, banking institutions to fill spaces that are coming up due on their lease on State Street, similar to what we allowed for Windward on the other side of the western side of the Windward block. So that's a quick rundown.
Okay, any questions for the counselor?
No?
Sorry,
Great.
thanks.
Have a good meeting.
Okay, we have some minutes to approve. First up, let's look at the minutes for March the 4th. And if I have any comments or revisions to that, otherwise I'm entertain a motion.
Chair Paulson, I did in advance make some suggested changes and edits to page 2 and page 5, and those are reflected in the red line draft in front of you to the March 4th, 2019 minutes.
Okay. Make sure everybody's had a chance to look at those. And
Mr. Chairman,
yeah,
I move we approve
okay,
as amended.
that's amended, okay.
I'll second that.
Second, good?
Polson,
Yes.
Aaron,
Abstain.
Shear,
Yes?
Frankel,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
Okay, next up, we have minutes for our April 15th meeting. Here, any,
Chair, I had also made some suggested edits to page 2, which are reflected in the red-lined version of the April 15th, 2019 minutes before you.
okay? Has everybody had a chance to read those and see if they're okay with those revisions?
Yeah, I move to approve the minutes as amended.
Second that.
Polson,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
And for the May 6th minutes, I see red marks already, Andy.
I had suggested edits to the first page of the May 6th, 2019 minutes, which are before you.
And I had a clarification. It was on page 3, but now it's probably moved to page 4 with those changes. And this had to do with the discussion about the right-of-way. Okay, yeah, this is at the top of page 4 in the edited version. It said that I had seen cars parked in the right-of-way of Percy Street, and I believe that's actually Maple Street right-of-way that runs east-west. Percy is only north-south. Just a point of clarification. Is that correct? That was my understanding.
I will verify that. I need a minute, though. I need to
Okay,
look it up.
so that was
think
my
you're
change. Okay, I think it should be Maple Street, pending staff's confirmation. I would move to approve the minutes with the changes from Commissioner Arthur and I.
Okay, well, with the pending modifier. do I hear a
Pending second.
Pending second.
Polson,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Smith, or, sorry, Frankel,
Abstain.
Arthur,
Yes.
Okay, good. Then we have some findings. This is for LU 19-0009, a request for approval of a major alteration to a historic resource, the existing garage for the Dr. Walter Black House. Construction on a site with a historic resource, a new two-car garage, and a major variance to reduce the 25-foot accessory structural front yard setback to 3 feet along the Maple Street frontage for the new garage. The site is located at 1125 Maple Street. The staff coordinator is and was Johanna Hasty, senior planner. Do I have any motions to approve our findings, or are there modifications there?
I will move to approve the findings for LU 19-0009.
Second?
Good.
Polson,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Smith,
Abstain?
Frankel,
Abstain.
Arthur.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along. Straight to our public hearing. This is for LU 19-0011, a request for approval of a modification to an approved development permit to construct a loading area canopy and covered detached greenhouse and outdoor sales area for a farm and garden store. The site is located at 17711 Jean Way and 5955 Jean Road. The staff coordinator is Ellen Davis, associate planner. Jessica, I don't see Ellen with us today.
No, I am filling in for Ellen as she is on vacation.
Okay, then.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Sorry. Well, do you want to address that evidentiary issue or the minutes issue before we get too deep into it?
It does look like it is the Maple Street right-of-way, so we will make that correction.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this land use request involves the application of the criteria and standards listed in the staff report, which is available online and is available on the table at the side of the room. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards applicable criteria listed in the staff report or such other criteria listed in the Lake Oswego Comprehensive Plan and land use regulations that you believe apply to this decision. Please specifically identify the criteria or standards you are addressing so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to the criteria or standards that you are asking the commission to consider. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you are addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you are testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Additionally, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. The hearing process is as follows. First, there'll be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following that will be the applicant's rebuttal up to 5 minutes, and then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. Those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which are the part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed that persons are testifying in their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. A potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC members do not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through a relative as defined in ORS 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, if you have any financial conflicts of interest, and your business or employment. Mr. Frankel.
Jason Frankel, bank manager here in Lake Oswego, longtime resident out here as well. I have not done a site visit. I've had no other ex parte contact, no bias, and no financial conflict.
Randy Arthur, I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland, Oregon law firm of Bullivan Bailey, PC. I did run a conflicts check on the names that I had, and we have no firm conflict. I have no disqualifying bias or financial interest. I have not done a site visit. I did at one time serve on the Planning Commission with fellow Commissioner Todd Prager, who has submitted an arborist report, I think, in favor of the application.
Okay, my name is David Polson. I'm a civil engineer. I have visited the site, even though I haven't really looked at it for this application specifically, but I've been there many times. I've had no ex parte contact, I have no biases, and I have no financial conflicts of interest.
My name is Brent Arend. I'm a traffic engineer with McKenzie in Portland. I will note that it was my office that designed the building originally for Nature's. Back in the 90s, my role was very, very limited on the project at that time. I've had no ex parte contact, I have no bias, and I have no conflict of interest. And I'm very familiar with the site, but I did not make a specific site visit for this application.
My name is Jeff Shear, retired contractor, longtime Lake Oswego resident. I did visit the site a couple times. I'm very aware of it. I used to live in the neighborhood. I've had no ex parte contact, no bias, and no financial conflicts of interest.
My name is Kirk Smith. I'm a real estate and finance attorney for the law firm of Ader Wynn. I ran conflicts check based on the information that was provided to me by the city. We have no conflicts with our firm. I have visited the site many times when it was a retail establishment, but nothing specifically for this application. I have no other ex parte contacts, no bias, and no other financial conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioners' right to consider the application? Hearing none, Planning Manager Jessica Numanaloo with the staff report.
Thank you, and good evening, Commissioners. The application for you tonight is for a site that is located at the intersection of Boones Ferry Road, Jean Way, and Jean Road. The northern portion of this site is zoned GC, or General Commercial, and the southern portion of the site is zoned IP. The site is together, which is a consolidated site, even though there's two different zones, it is one consolidated lot, is approximately 2 acres in size, and it is located in the Southwest Overlay District. There are 60 trees on the site that are 6 inches in diameter or greater, and surrounding uses are mainly IP to the south, east, and west, and there is some GC located to the north. The proposal before you tonight is for retail use. There was a grocery store here previously. This is more of a farm and garden center use, but it's a retail use. They're proposing a new covered garden center here along the frontage of Boones Ferry Road, and as well as a new loading canopy here on the front facade facing Jean Way. And then they want to convert some existing outdoor surface parking area to an uncovered outdoor sales area. So it will have a fence around it, but will otherwise be unenclosed. I do want to note that on page 7 of the staff report, under the uses discussion for the GC zone, it does incorrectly state that the applicant proposes 30,314 square feet of retail use. The correct size, which is discussed on page 13 of the staff report under the parking standard, is actually 43,425 square feet. In the GC zone in this area of the Southwest Overlay District, up to 45,000 square feet of retail use is allowed, a gross floor area. Therefore, the use does comply with that limitation. On the IP zone portion of the site, which is where this uncovered outdoor sales area is, it's a little bit more complicated, unfortunately. If you look in the use table, it states that retail between 10 and 20,000 square feet of gross floor area is allowed as a conditional use. The IP zone portion of the site, though it is a different site, as I noted before, is a consolidated part of the site. So it is still one site, even though the zone boundary remains. An open outdoor sales area does not have gross floor area. In order to, if you look at our definition of gross floor area, it's an enclosed space. So it needs to have walls and a roof, and it doesn't. You can also reference the definition of floor area and gross floor area in the code. Uncovered retail sales areas, just outdoor resale sales area, are not covered in the use table for the IP zone. Staff has an interpretation, and that is that it's a similar use to retail. And similar uses, we do have this provision in our code for a similar use, and it's per section 50.03.002.1G. And similar uses are permitted if they have similar intensity, density, off-site impacts, and impacts on community facilities as uses permitted in the zone. In this case, the outdoor sales area is accessory to the main retail use on the site, which is on the GC zone portion, and that is permitted outright. Accessory retail sales is an outright permitted use in the IP zone per the use table, provided in the IP zone the use is, quote, limited to 25% of gross floor area, again, there's no gross floor area here, not to exceed 5,000 square feet per business. This accessory outdoor retail use, we find that it does comply with the standards for specific uses because it is not greater than 25% of the gross floor area of the outdoor retail use because it has 0 gross floor area. Therefore, under the similar use analysis, staff does find that it complies with this standard. I know that's very convoluted and roundabout, but it's not easy to address because this type of use is just not addressed at all in the IP zone. Moving on to the Southwest Overlay District standards. This standard does apply for any addition that's 300 square feet in size or greater. The proposed loading canopy here shown on this elevation on the north, or excuse me, I believe the east elevation, is 665 square feet, so the Southwest Overlay standards apply. This building preceded the Southwest Overlay District standards, so it's actually non-conforming to many of those standards, and that's okay. They can maintain that non-conformity as long as anything new that they do does not increase the degree of non-conformity. The staff report has detailed discussion of all the different standards. Many of them don't apply because it doesn't increase the degree of nonconformity. The one that I do want to highlight is the gateway treatment standard. And this standard was actually in effect when, or a version of it was in effect when this building was originally constructed. And when the new Southwest Overlay District standards were created, they basically moved that standard over, or maintained that standard, although they did have some revisions to it. And that standard requires that gateway treatments be located at the Jeanway Boones Ferry Road intersection, so particularly along the Boones Ferry Road frontage, to create a visual identity for vehicles and pedestrians entering the district and the city. Gateway materials shall be composed of architectural details, signage, or landscaping that creates strong identity and a visual landmark. The applicant is proposing to refresh and expand the existing mural. There's actually, I don't think it's shown, yeah, there's a wall along the north elevation where there's an existing mural which they want to refresh and repaint, and then also expand that mural, which obviously would be a strong gateway element. They're also proposing for the new garden center expansion, which is not enclosed, although it will have a fence around it and it will have a roof. It consists of kind of a sawtooth pattern, and I know they'll talk about it in more detail when the applicant presents. Exposed structural elements, including CMU block columns with steel columns and heavy timber roof structure that kind of mimics the style and the materials on the existing building. The new fence will be black wrought iron, and staff finds that along these materials, along with refreshing the mural and then planting of new trees along the frontage, will create a strong gateway identity. I do also want to point out that a condition of approval of the original development permit prohibited the storage of materials out in this area of the site. There was a gazebo there, and they were allowed to have seasonal display of materials, and that is what the applicant is proposing, is the seasonal display of materials out in this area. But I just want to reiterate that the prior condition of approval still applies. They cannot use this for just excess storage area in order to sort of maintain that gateway appearance. Moving on to parking. The site plan currently shows the loss of about 40 parking spaces, and that would be due to the expansion, or the addition, excuse me, of the proposed loading canopy, as well as the conversion of this covered parking, uncovered parking area to an outdoor sales area. Essentially, the only improvements that they've indicated would be a fence that would be around the perimeter of that site. Based on the size of the building, there's 110 parking spaces that are required. However, after conversion of the existing parking, or loss of those existing parking spaces, there will only be 95 spaces. So as a condition of approval, which is condition A1A, staff is requiring them to submit a revised site plan showing a minimum of 110 parking spaces, so they will have to provide at least 15 additional parking spaces, and that could be accomplished by reconfiguring this uncovered outdoor sales area. When they submit that revised site plan, staff will review it to make sure it still complies with the parking and loading standards in terms of aisle dimensions and whatnot. Although I do want to point out that the existing parking is non-conforming, which they're allowed to maintain, as long as they don't increase the degree of nonconformity. They're nonconforming, I believe, to some aisle widths as well as depth of parking stalls. But again, that is allowed to maintain. I do also want to point out that Commissioner Aaron brought to my attention that the fencing for the outdoor sales area might conflict with some vaults and a fire hydrant that are located, and I've got a picture here of the approximate location. It's kind of hard to see, but there's the fire hydrant and some vaults right here at this secondary entrance to the site. So staff is recommending an additional condition of approval that would prohibit the existing vault and the risers from being enclosed by the new fence, and would require a minimum 5-foot clearance between the fence and those utilities. Part of the proposal includes the removal of 9 trees. Those trees are 6 Douglas firs that range in size from 10 inch to 17 inches in diameter, 2 small apple trees, and a pear tree. There are 4 additional trees that are being removed in this area. These are less than 6-inch apple trees, and I think there's like a 4-inch tree down here, but those do not require a permit to remove. The arborist has stated in their materials that there's no anticipated impacts to erosion, soil stability, or surface waters because the area of removal is basically flat and there are no surface water or drainage courses there. As you can see, the trees proposed for removal are relatively small and they're mostly interior to the cluster. There will be trees remaining along the perimeter of the site, as well as this is the area where additional trees will be planted. And finds that there's no significant impacts to adjacent trees or existing wind breaks. As I stated before, only one of the trees exceeds 15 inches in diameter, which is one of the criteria for the tree to be considered significant, and that is a 17-inch Douglas fir. And that tree is classified as healthy, so it is eligible to be a significant tree, but it is not significant due to species. There are many Doug firs in the area. It's not significant due to size, as similar sized trees in front of it will remain. And it's not distinctive due to character. Because it is located near the existing gazebo, it's away from Boones Ferry Road. It's not a prominently located tree on the site. None of the trees are also considered significant per the criteria because none of the trees proposed for removal provides a screen between dissimilar zoning districts. All of the zoning districts are similar. There's no residential nearby. And no more than 1/3 of the existing stand of trees is proposed for removal. So the conclusion by staff for the proposed tree removal is per the criteria, it does not have a significant negative impact on the character and aesthetics of the neighborhood. And I do want to note that 6 of the 9 trees being removed are native trees and will be required to, as a result, 6 native mitigation trees will be required to be planted. This is the applicant, the mitigation plan proposed by the applicant. And while they do have 4 native mitigation trees, this Alaskan cedar, the other trees are non-native, so they will have to modify their plan to include at least an additional 2 native trees. So in conclusion, staff is recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions of approval listed on pages 1 to 3 of the staff report with a couple of revisions and additions. The first is the deletion of conditions A2 and C2, and this was due to a finding that staff had in the staff report regarding open space and landscaping. Ellen had overlooked that they did provide the amount of open space and landscaping on the site to show that it was at least 20% of the site, and they have 21%, which is shown on Exhibit E5. So we don't need those conditions of approval because it actually is in the record. The second is an addition of a condition of approval, which I discussed regarding the vaults and fire hydrants that are in the right-of-way and maintaining a 5-foot clearance from the proposed fence around the new outdoor retail use. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I do also want to note that the applicant, I believe, has brought several of their consultants tonight, including their stormwater consultant and their arborist. So if you have questions related to those matters, they're here to answer them as well.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I've got some. Jessica, thanks for addressing most of the things that I asked you earlier today. So do you know if the original application included a conditional use for the retail parking in the IP zone?
I did not find that it did contain conditional use. And I also looked at the code in effect at that time, and it doesn't list parking as a permitted use, as a sole permitted use on that site. But it was not addressed. There was no conditional use, as far as I could tell. It's possible that it was done in another application, but I could not locate one this afternoon.
Okay, and then, I don't have the code language in front of me, but the language you referenced about the similar use, or, you mentioned that in the zone, and then I think you referred to the retail being in the general commercial, but I'm wondering if the code refers to in the IP zone and not the general commercial zone.
Well, this is where it gets down to being an accessory use to the main use on the consolidated site. So as an accessory use, it would be allowed. It's sort of a, the code does not cover every possible accessory use that could be allowed. So for instance, the Safeway across the street has a Starbucks in it. We don't look at that as its own separate use. We consider it to be a sort of typical accessory use according to the industry. There's a lot of grocery stores that have banks or Starbucks that are in them, so we don't separate those out as their own use.
But if we had another situation where we had a GC zone adjacent to IP, if they came in with a GC and put the building on GC and all the parking on IP, is that something the city would be likely to approve? That's really the question, in my mind. I know we have a pre-existing condition, but we're changing it from parking to outdoor retail. And I think the intent of the code, the way I read it, was it's a conditional use. I understand how staff gets to their interpretation, but I'm not sure that I agree with that. But it is something, maybe the applicant can talk a little bit more about it, and we'll see what the testimony is tonight.
And this is, again, this is staff's interpretation. We do have the provision for a similar use analysis. It is difficult because there is no enclosed retail space, and the listed permitted use all reference gross floor area retail, and this just doesn't fit into that because it's not an enclosed area.
Okay, and then can you go back a couple slides? So I also had a question about the, there you go. So down in the corner, it looks like the right-of-way extends into the street or the sidewalk. Yeah, down at that corner of Jean Way and Jean Road. I was wondering if in fact that is the case, if what we're showing as the property right-of-way line is correct, and if there's an opportunity now to get some right-of-way dedication to make sure that the street and sidewalk are in the right-of-way.
Well, we did look at this, and the engineering staff does agree that it does appear that the right-of-way extends toward the curb return and possibly terminates between the sidewalk and the existing curb. Typically, we would want to get the right-of-way to clean that up. However, because, and there is an analysis on the staff report under the street and sidewalk standard, that because the proposed use is not increasing the existing or the pre-existing trip generation, we do not have a nexus in which to require right-of-way dedication at this time. But
So not, because I think your analysis talks about road improvements or capacity improvements. So
Right.
right-of-way would fall into that, any right-of-way dedication?
That would be an exaction, a right, for them to dedicate right-of-way would be an exaction similar to street improvements. The engineering staff did note that there is a recorded sidewalk easement at the curb return for that portion of the sidewalk that is located outside of the existing public right-of-way. So
Okay.
we do have an easement that covers it.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that was all I had. I'll let others ask now.
Okay, those are good. Any other questions? Jessica, I'm trying to understand the retail issue here a little bit. So it's an uncovered retail area. What's the aspirational language there? I mean, I'm just trying to understand why retail is considered, for parking requirements and, and other normal things that retail would qualify for in the code. So like in this case, I think if you go back to the parking issue there, if this is retail, and it's used for, selling, doesn't it qualify for so many square feet of retail equals so many parking space requirements? And how does that work out here? Are you counting it this time, or is this a zero?
That's a good question. So the parking standard is based on gross floor area. So neither the uncovered outdoor sales area nor the garden center, which just has a roof, it's not enclosed on any of the sides, is counted towards the retail, counting towards parking requirement. It's just the gross floor area of the building. This is similar, and people actually protest this and they don't agree, but it's what the code says. Even for restaurants where you have outdoor seating area, that's not counted towards parking. It's only the interior gross floor area of the actual restaurant. So this would be a similar to that type of an analogy.
Okay.
The outdoor unenclosed areas are not counted in parking.
I think that the reason why we relate retail to parking is the number of cars that the retail attracts. Now, maybe outside, dining would attract more cars to that restaurant. I don't know that one. That's, the restaurant itself would attract the number of users or customers. But in this case, I would think an outdoor retail area would attract additional customers, which would trigger a significant need for parking for that. I mean, it's retail that's not happening inside the building, it's happening outside the building, but in aggregate, it's more retail. And wouldn't that trigger a need for more parking? I'm just, it seems common sense.
Well, per the code, it's based on gross floor area, and those outdoor spaces are not counted in gross floor area.
Okay, well, I got the answer, so I don't want to keep hammering on things. Okay, so let's hear from the applicant.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for reviewing our application. My name is Sam Bugarski. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Wilco Farmers Co-op in Mount Angel, Oregon. I'm the president of Wilco Stores. So a little bit about Wilco, first of all, and I can answer some questions, some more detailed questions about that space in question, that yard area, as I get a little further in. So Wilco Farmers Co-op, you may have heard about us by now. So we're a complete farmer-owned cooperative, owned by about 3,000 farmer members, mostly in Oregon. So all of our profits either go back into the business or are distributed to our farmer members. Nothing's held for private ownership or any equity partners. So Wilco Farmers, we have 4 what we call business units. One of them is a ag supply business, so we distribute fertilizer products and crop protection products, and we do crop consulting for farm customers and our members and other farm customers in Oregon and Washington. We have an energy business where we distribute diesel, gasoline, propane, and lubricants to commercial, agricultural, and homeowners in Oregon and Washington. We own another cooperative, the Hazelnut Growers of Oregon. So our company processes and markets about 1/3 of the hazelnut crop in Oregon, which is about it is 99% of the U.S. hazelnut crop. So that's a significant business for us. We just built and opened a new processing facility in Donald, Oregon, 2 years ago. So then our 4th business unit is the farm store business, or the Wilco Stores business, be a better way to identify it. And that's really the face of our company, Wilco Stores, and it's probably the biggest growth segment for our company. We have 20 stores in Oregon and Washington. We're a growth company. We're trying to open a store or 2 a year, depending on adequate opportunities. Last year we're looking for new locations at kind of the edges of our overall geography. Last year we opened a store in Bremerton, Washington. That's as far north as we go right now. And we opened a store last year also in Redmond, Oregon. So we have 3 stores in Central Oregon, and we go as far south as Springfield at this point. So we're looking for opportunities to extend that geography all directions, but at the same time, looking for opportunities to fill in where we have distribution voids. And that's where Lake Oswego comes in. Lake Oswego, we've identified some time ago that this area around, I'll call it Wilsonville, Tualatin, Lake Oswego, that whole kind of area is a distribution gap for Wilco Stores. We have a store in Newburgh, a store in Oregon City, and a store in Canby. And from our sales data, we recognize we have customers that live in and around this Lake Oswego site that shop those 3 stores. So we know we have some known kind of business to start out with in Lake Oswego. So we've been looking for a while for the right site in this area, kind of more, I would say, looking further south most, Wilsonville and some other areas around Tualatin. And this current site in Lake Oswego caught really my eye first. I live in West Lynn, so I'm driving in the area on a regular basis, and sad to see that building, a really nice-looking building, vacant as long as it's been vacant. So we decided to take a look at it. We really appealing kind of design, we believe, and it fits some of the other designs of our newer styled store buildings. So we started to take a look at that site, and one of probably the early challenges we recognized was the garden center limitations. Our stores, we have 5 signature departments in our stores, Have anybody been in a Wilco store from the group? No? Right here. Okay, a couple of you have. Good. So our stores are, I wouldn't really call them a farm store. In fact, we refer to them more as just a Wilco store these days, more than a farm and ranch store. We have the livestock department, which is responsible for 35% or so of our sales, up to 40% of our sales, depending on the store location. And then we have 4 other signature departments. So the first one being pet, so we have a pet store within a store. In Lake Oswego, we would offer full-service dog grooming and our first ever self-wash stations. So we've designed kind of a self-wash area adjacent to our dog grooming area. We would have a hardware store, so we partner with True Value, so we'll have a True Value branded full-line hardware store with paint at that site. We would have what we call a lifestyle clothing pad. So some of you have been in the building. There's a mezzanine inside that was once used for a restaurant portion of one of the stores, the prior tenants. And we'd use that for a kind of this clothing pad where we'd specialize in kind of work and Western clothing. And then a garden center where we have a refined strategy really where we're trying to offer the hardline garden products, tools, watering supplies, everything you might find at a Lowe's or Home Depot, but in a more intimate building. And then an outdoor live goods garden area that was more like a nursery garden center than it would be like a big box garden center. So that brings me kind of that garden center area, which again was the biggest challenge. So we actually stepped away from the consideration for a while and then decided to take a look at that kind of gateway space at the corner to see if we could find a way to get the required amount of space for garden plant material. So we had a pre-app meeting with your team, your staff, over a year ago, and they made it very clear that that area is the gateway to the city, and it was real important that we made an impression there. And so we are very capable architect, did some good work on design, and they were able to, we think, we come up with a design different than our other stores. Normally, we would put in more of a kind of a commercial greenhouse type structure with, and a little bit sterile looking. Well, they played off of the existing gazebo with, and kind of mimicked mini gazebo portions off of the main structure to design a system that fits the building and we think is very attractive at that kind of gateway angle into the store. So expensive for us. So we're going to invest about $2 million in that building to get ready, which is more than we would prefer to invest in at least that portion of the space. But in addition to that kind of gazebo area, they looked at well, first of all, I should say, I should mention that in order to get that required space and add those gazebo features, we did have to remove some trees. So staff advised us to hire a arborist to take a look at that and help us figure out what made sense there to make room for these gazebos. So we did that. He's here tonight, I think, if we have any questions for him. But we did end up removing the 13 trees. We were able to put back 14 trees on the site. And then we focused also on the general landscape area, and we're proposing 26,000 feet of landscaping, and which is almost 7,460 square feet more than is required on the site. So trying to kind of make up for some of the alterations. Then I think the mural was mentioned, so we plan to update the mural, not change it, but just, it's been a while since it was painted, so just kind of refurbish it, would probably be a good word, and then extend it to an additional panel, if approved. We propose to extend it to an additional panel with similar theme, kind of farmer's market, kind of a theme. So with that in mind, and then the design of those gazebos in the sawtooth pattern was to accommodate some new tree plantings, and also to just give it that something, a little texture to the view coming into that garden center area. So, with that, I just comment that we'll have 40 full-time or 40 to 50 employees at the store. About half of them will be full-time, fully benefited, the other half part-time, but also benefited. And then I can comment a little bit on that area that was discussed, the outside sales area. So that livestock department that addresses 35 to 40% of our sales, we're not really looking at this store location to be one of our top livestock stores, although we do have known customers up towards Stafford area and other angles, I guess, across in Wilsonville that would probably find Lake Oswego more convenient. But we do sell fencing products, we sell livestock gates and equipment, some kind of light tractor type implements, not big equipment like you'd see in an equipment yard, but small tractor type implements. Those are the type of materials that we would set up for sale in that yard. Probably also the bagged soils would be set up there for kind of outside sales. So that's kind of the requirement for that space. This is a little less space than we'd normally offer for those products, but we think I guess we're motivated enough in this building to make that work.
Ready for some questions, if we have some?
Sure.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Here's an interesting proposal. Randy?
I was just wanting clarification. Your 43,000 square feet of retail on the site, is that occupying the entire building, or is there another use on the site in addition to the garden center and the uncovered outdoor sales area?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because really, our space, we carve out about 22,000 square feet on the actual retail sales floor, and the rest of the space is what I'd call kind of servicing warehouse, so backstock, we'll have feed and that kind of product at the store. So that's the reason for the loadout, is the drive-through loadout is one of our strategies, a covered area where we can load customers with bagged feed or large bags of pet food, large bags of wild birds. So really, our retail space in the store itself is about 22,000 feet. Plus, if you added the gazebo, there's some additional square footage up there. So, yeah, so yeah, we're not really utilizing the entire space for retail floor space. If that answers your question, all right.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. I intended to mention that.
So one of my concerns had been the substandard parking stalls.
Yeah.
And the narrow drive aisles. Some of those spaces are 14, 15 feet deep, which doesn't even meet the city's compact standard today. So I'm a little concerned, although I don't know that there's much we can do about it, maybe you'll have larger vehicles coming to pick up supplies. And do you guys feel comfortable that you'll have enough room for the customers to come in and park and to maneuver if they're picking up larger loads?
So that's a good question, too. We did think about that. So our store, it's kind of I'll describe it as a high-ticket store. It's not grocery traffic. So and our plan is I believe our plan is to actually engage a traffic study, because even the 110 spaces for us, we believe, is high for our requirements. We're also open a pretty long day, so 8 to 8, 6 days a week. So our business spreads out, so we'll have in the neighborhood of 500 customers spread out over that 12-hour day. So really, in fact, I was a little surprised, because I shouldn't say most, many jurisdictions are holding us back in parking, not asking for more. So they're more limiting our parking these days than they have requiring more. So I think the space size, though, normally we would like to have wider and longer spaces, even some drive-through spaces if we could. The code, I don't think, allows the drive-through spaces in this case. or we would have removed the space between the parking to allow for kind of those larger vehicles. But from a pure traffic count standpoint, we should be in great shape.
Okay, so you think the parking number is sufficient?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I think
because
we'll be in great
one of
shape with
the
that number.
conditions that staff has recommended is to provide, I think it was 15 more spaces.
Yeah, so
Is
we're
that-
willing to comply with that. We're
Okay.
gonna edit the drawing to find the space for those, probably in the outdoor sales yard area is probably where they'd have to come. But we're planning, I think, a traffic study to see if we could present a case for less spaces.
Okay, is that something the city allows then?
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's a parking study, and this is something we discussed with the applicant recently, given that we were going to have this condition for fewer parking spaces, or for more parking spaces, excuse me. The code actually allows an applicant to comply with either the numerical standard, which is just the 3.33 spaces per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area in this case, or they can do a parking study. So the applicant could come back later and do a modification to this application to do a parking study, and if they can show that they need less spaces, then that could potentially be approved.
So if we were to agree to allow them to do that, then would we need to modify the condition to allow them to do that? Otherwise,
Yeah,
the
so they
condition
would
says.
they would have to come in for a modification, so they'd have to come in for another land use application in order to do that. But I believe that they don't want to do that at this time because they want to move forward. If they were to introduce that into this application, we'd have to renotice and delay the hearing, which I believe they want to kind of get moving on this. So I think their strategy is to go ahead and provide those extra 15 spaces and then come back later and do a parking study application.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know, it seems like the outdoor uncovered sales area could be converted if you were to go away one day and this would be used by some other use, that can be reconverted back to parking for that future use. So it seems to me that if the number of parking spaces that is shown here would be enough for the current use, your use, then, you know, it's something that we should consider for that, so. And I'm also noticing that there's only one row there, Aaron, that's 14 feet in depth. There's another row that's 15.
Right,
That's
if I
like-
remember right, the minimum depth right now for compact is 16, is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like City of Portland, for example, gives you a 2-foot overhang to make up that, so they allow 14 feet, City of Portland parking standards.
But we don't.
But we don't, so I just want to bring that
Yeah,
up.
as I noted, you know, my concern is you'll have larger vehicles, maybe more pickups here.
Right.
given
That's why
the
they
use.
have a width of 9.5 feet width, which is pretty ample.
So my understanding too, and staff can confirm, if they made any changes to the parking, like you had mentioned, removing that landscape strip between the head-in spaces, that would require a upgrade of the non-conforming spaces, is that correct? If they chose to modify some of the parking spaces?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, you know, we allow people to restripe if it doesn't increase the degree of nonconformity. I don't know if that's possible in this case. There are some modifications that could possibly be done, but generally, if you're removing landscape island, you're affecting landscape percentages on the site in addition to potential parking. So we would need to review that. So they would need to come talk to us, and then we would determine whether a minor development review would be necessary. But it is possible. It might
Okay.
not.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay,
I just have a,
okay.
excuse me real quick. Tree number 66 is the one that doesn't have a significant impact on removal. I'm just trying to figure out then, does it have any significant for non-removal? I mean, what's the purpose of getting rid of, and I love all the landscaping that you guys are talking about. I think that's great. I love it, but normally when we see a project of this size, we're looking at double-digit trees that are going. But this is one big tree in a cluster, and I appreciate that it's just one. But if there's no significance in it leaving, then why aren't we keeping it?
I'd need some help with that one, I'm afraid, so.
Well, it's right in the footprint of where they're putting the gazebo. So this is tree number 66, and they are, let me see if I can find the site plan. Let me go back. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, so you can see these X areas, this is where the expanded gazebos are, and I think that tree is right there.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
As long as we're on trees, I was wondering about trees number 58 and 59. I'm assuming they're being removed because of the rain garden, but the rain garden, what, is only 2 feet deep? Why would we need to remove those trees?
You need to put them inside the rain garden.
Well, they're outside the rain garden.
Which sheet are you looking at?
I am looking at page, Exhibit 001, I think it's 174, looks like this.
That's the very last page.
Looks like this. Probably the last page of the, so,
Oh, okay. Is that part of the arborist report?
yes.
So
I think we
I'm
have the arborist
Todd
here.
Greger, I'm the project arborist, Tarragon and Associates. So the question again was trees
Trees 58 and 59,
58 and 59.
they're near the proposed rain garden. I'm assuming that's why they're being removed.
Yeah, so the excavation for the rain garden is very close to the trunks of the trees and within the root system. So even though it's a shallow dig there, the majority of a tree's root system is in the upper 24 to 36 inches of soil. So even taking, a shallow layer of soil out would remove most of the root system on that's the south side of those trees. So they're proposed for removal because of the health and structural stability impacts to the trees from that rain garden excavation.
So you think, if I'm looking at, and I'm sorry, everything's overlaid here, 11 of 174, I think, it's either E005 or L100. Landscape 100 for you.
Yeah, I don't have those sheets in front of me.
That's the new, excuse
Do
me.
you have a page number?
That's the new. I want the existing. So you're going down 2 feet in the rain garden in the center and a foot on the outside. You're just going from 166 to 165. Looks like you're scraping the top and you're just down a foot. And I'm not sure on an engineering scale how far that is in on the rain garden, but look at C300, you might be able to find that. Are you looking at this?
C300? Yeah, I have that.
Okay, so if you look at that, and then you look at the removal, so you're basically not scraping anything in the first, I don't know how many feet that is back in, 3 feet of the rain garden, foot and a half. So you're not really getting much into those roots except at the last, where you drop down to the 165 level. Here's my point. I'm a contractor. I like, I like trees. I just kind of think we might be able to save those two. They're not in bad shape. They're healthy. I know we got to make the rain garden work. I'm sure there'll be some rain garden questions. I just wanted to see if we could do that.
Okay.
And because we are taking the other ones out, and they're pretty nice trees. I understand that I'm not really worried about the apple trees and the pear trees, but the fir trees, I just was looking at it, I just thought maybe we could save those two. you're probably gonna, actually even 67, even though it's in poor shape, if I'm thinking clearly, you'll have a pier there with a couple of columns. You may or may not get into the roots, but you'll definitely go under the wall, so maybe that one needs to be pulled. But I would like you to consider 58 and 59.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look at just the scale of how far we are from those trees of where we start the excavation, because, I mean, even a foot, just those feeder roots and the shallowness of the root system could be significant if we're taking off a large percentage, but
It just,
I think it's something we could probably look at and see if there's, an adjustment that could be made, or maybe it's not as significant.
I'm not, don't have the scale here, but it doesn't look like 58, you're barely getting into the tips. 59, you might be getting into it a little bit. So,
Is your engineer who designed the rain garden here?
Mr.
I
Chair.
don't see him. Brady here, or?
I'm the.
flip it a foot to the right. Sidewalk.
I was just
I'm
thinking,
Andrew.
maybe you could
Sorry.
address the depth that you need for the rain garden and if it can move to save the trees.
Well, Mr. Chair,
Well, the footprint we have, I'm Andrew Rapé with David Evans and Associates. I'm a project engineer. Brady Berry is the project manager and the engineer of record in this case. So this footprint, this is based
Excuse me
off.
just
of-
1 second.
Yeah.
Evan, am I out of line?
well, let me just, if I may,
Yeah.
the way we look at the tree code criteria number one is it being removed for the purpose of development or landscaping? And we look at the plausibility argument there. I mean, they are proposing the trees for removal in order to accommodate the rain garden, so development, okay. We don't get into an alternative site design and see what we can do to save the trees until we go through criteria 3. And criteria 3 says, does it meet one of that significant tree test? Is it more than 15 inches in healthy condition or distinctive due to character size or species? There's other factors, or there's other criteria also that might trigger that criteria 3 analysis. Is it the only tree left on the site? Is it going to alter the skyline, et cetera? If it doesn't do any of those under criteria 3, then we don't get into this alternative site analysis. And that's an exception to meeting criteria 3. If you don't meet the criteria 3, then you can go through the alternative site analysis to say, well, what if you move things this way and that way? Can you still build what you're entitled to without removing the tree? So when we talk about what can we do to move or accommodate the stormwater and save the trees, it sounds like we're exploring the exception language. And I think you would first need to find that one of the 5 or 6 criteria under section 3 is not being met.
Okay. What did you say the diameter was, 16?
They're both 12 inches.
No, I know how big they are. What did you say the exception is?
15 inches is the trigger on the
Okay,
significant
they're
tree.
14, okay.
Or 12?
They're 12.
One's 14, I think.
I think they're both 12.
58? 14 and 12. 58,
Listed as
59.
12.
So,
I mean, it's fine to ask,
I
and maybe
just-
they can do something, but
no, I'm just,
Yeah.
I read that. I did not see the 16-inch criteria. So, that being said,
the 15-inch criteria?
didn't you say 16-inch?
No, it's 15, it has to be greater than for a
Has to be
significant
greater-
tree, greater than 15 inches.
Okay, this one's 14, I must have overread
Okay.
that, is what and then when you said that, I rang a bell with me. I apologize for interrupting.
Would you like me to continue? Or
But I have standing to do that.
Let me ask this question, because I think I know the answer. What's the depth that you have to go down just to get the medium and the base rock in at the edge of the pond? It looks like it's about 1.5 feet. Is that true? So you're
That's
kind of
correct.
right at the tree. So even though you finish at grade, you have to put the medium and the rock in,
That's correct,
and then you slope down from there.
right, at a 3-to-1 slope.
And about how deep would you excavate to the bottom to put that rain garden in?
At the top level, it's about 1.5 feet.
And then at the bottom?
So it'd be about elevation 166 at the top, and then elevation 163.5 at the bottom. So,
Is that the bottom of the garden or the bottom of the excavation?
bottom of the garden, so that would
So
be
the
the
excavation
surface
would be
level of
even-
the soil for the finished.
So the excavation would be
condition.
like 4.5 feet down before you put that medium and the rock in?
Correct.
Okay, so I think that answers the question, because you have to go down 1.5 feet right next to the trees, and then you slope down to about 4 feet or so from there.
Correct.
Okay. Just to be clear about how deep they have to go down.
I understand, but I still, my thought was that they're not going that deep right off the bat, but that,
I think they are. That was my point. They're going to 1.5 feet right off the bat, right next to the tree, and then
Correct.
sloping down.
And that's most easily shown on section 1 on sheet C300.
Yeah.
I've got a quick question for the city attorney, Evan. So, using your criteria, if you wanted to take out a tree that's, that you just don't want at all, for any reason, and it doesn't meet those 3 criteria, then they can do it.
Well, it has to meet criterion 1, which is, the purpose of it has to be for development or landscaping. Okay? So when you say take out a tree for any reason at all, many times a person on a site might say, well, for landscaping purposes. All right. I mean,
Okay.
that's their purpose, for landscaping. If they've articulated a landscaping purpose, then we come down to whether or not the tree is significant to the neighborhood. And that has 5 or 6 tests. If it's not significant to the character and aesthetics of the neighborhood by meeting one of those 6 criteria, then yes, then the tree can be removed, provided, again, well, criterion 2 is no negative effects due to soil erosion, wind throw, et cetera, and the 4th one is not solely for the purpose of enhancing views, so.
So if we were to, just for the sake of discussion, imagine either an alternative water quality treatment system here, or a reconfiguration of it that would save that tree, and suggest that to the applicant, that with that reconfiguration, they could save the tree. Is that within our purview to make such a suggestion?
Well, you can suggest it, but as far as adopting findings to do so, you'd have to go through that analysis, and unless you can say that it is necessary in order to provide the in order to preserve the neighborhood character and aesthetics by meeting those.
I'm not
you
gonna
could
meet
not impo-
those.
Yeah, you could not impose it then.
Right. So it just, because
So-
I can see a geometric reconfiguration here that would probably save that tree.
Right, but unless it
And-
has a neighborhood character effect, I mean, if you, well, for
Right,
the
right, that's-
policy perspective here, if it has no neighborhood character effect, then we're not here to, try to
yeah, but the
save
neighborhood
tree.
character effect, it can kind of be an opinion.
Well, again, it can be,
That's like
but-
saying, what color is white with my
No,
wife?
it is one of those 6 criteria, okay? Those 6 criteria,
example.
that is significant tree, alter the skyline, only tree, a street tree. If it's one of those 6
Yeah.
criteria in section 3, that does then alter the neighborhood, that does have a neighborhood character and effect. It isn't,
Yeah, but I can say it's significant because I like it.
no, you'd have to say it's significant because,
It's significant to me.
no.
See, you're not making it up as
All
you
right,
go
never
along
mind.
here.
See, the problem is, well, and, it's easily misunderstood. The code does say significant to the neighborhood character and aesthetics, okay? Which sounds like open-ended. But then the code also defines, it says, these are what trigger significance to the neighborhood character and aesthetics, one of these 6 items, okay? So
And can I clarify, it's that it has a significant negative impact on the character and aesthetics, not that it just has an impact, it has to have a significant negative impact. So it's a little bit higher bar
Right.
than just, I like the tree, every tree should stay.
But But all of those,
there's some, everybody can have their own opinion and argument, so, but we try to have more, as to the extent possible, objective criteria, but there still is
Okay, I went out and
subjectiveness.
looked at it on the objective criteria, and I thought that's gonna put a big hole in the,
neighborhood skyline?
well, I wasn't going neighborhood skyline, I was gonna put in the landscaping, in my opinion, and I thought they looked good there, and I thought they could be moved very, with the rain garden because I didn't think the depth of disturbance of the, roots were that much. But again, that was just my opinion, I asked the question, and we've gone down a rat hole too.
Well, it does have to affect the neighborhood skyline, and it's one of those 6 items. If you meet one of those 6 items, then it does have a significant negative impact to the character and aesthetics of the neighborhood. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
I'd say reconfigure the water quality system and save the money on taking out the tree. But, let's go on. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. We have some public comments. And usually we first go for the fellow proponents, which I see none of. Then we'll go for the opponents. But I have one slip here from Ann Savage that didn't check any box at all. Is Ann here? Ann? And are you an opponent or a neither for nor against or a proponent?
I want to discuss the trees.
So you would be are you?
Opponent, I guess.
Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. I'll just mark that. And then, okay, so while I've got you, Ann, let's hear then, since we're on trees, come on up and.
This is the first time I've been to one of these, so
It's okay. You state your name and your
I'm Ann
address. and-
Savage. I live on Hill Way, ride Jean Road, go to Jean Way, so I'm familiar with the area. First thing I did was look up the tree code, which says the purpose of the Lake Oswego Tree Code is to preserve the wooded character of the city of Lake Oswego and protect the trees as a natural resource by regulating the removal of trees, encouraging and assisting property owners in managing large forestry properties, and prescribing preventive protective measure to avoid damage to trees during site development. And I had some questions. You got 9 trees that you're talking about. Did you know, and I looked it up on Lake Oswego site, got a thing, 173 trees were listed for removal for May. And here we are talking about 9, which are very good trees. You wanted to know what a significant tree means? It is a non-invasive tree over 15-inch DBH that is considered significant to the neighborhood due to size, species, distinctive character, or the only remaining tree on the property. So these are, with the Development Commission, I'm glad to hear you asking the questions and thinking about it, because I have a question. What is the average number of trees in Lake Oswego cut down every month? Does anybody know? That's when I found 173 on the site. And then this year is the 30th year of Lake Oswego's Tree City designation. And National Arbor Day was through April 7th through the 14th. And the City Council proclaimed Arbor Day as important because it's one of the 4 criteria to get the Tree USA designation. And we're talking about taking down lots of trees. And I think, and I like your idea of trying how to save those trees. I think it's very important. And I did look up the tree code, and I have a lot of the information here that I looked up. And I think that they need to be able to not do that. And the 100 trees are coming down off Boones Ferry Road very soon.
Thank you.
And anybody have any questions? I don't know if I,
Anybody? Yeah.
I do. Do you know, out of the, I think you said 173 trees that were recently approved?
173 trees
Do you
are
know how
designated to
many
come
of those-
down in Lake Oswego.
Do you know how many of those are significant trees?
Beg your pardon?
Do you know how many of those are significant trees?
No, because, well. It doesn't say here. It just says what the tree quantity, the last day of submit comments, and then the tentative decisions.
Okay. And then do you believe that any of the trees they're proposing to cut down on the site are significant, meet the city's
I think so.
regulatory definition?
But based on the definition that I read.
And which, do you know which ones?
59, 58, there's those at the corner before you turn right to go onto Jean Way when you're coming down Boones Ferry.
But why are they significant? That's the,
Because they're big, beautiful trees with a big canopy. They give beauty to our city.
Whether they meet the DBH.
there's 6 criteria that staff mentioned.
Well,
So,
according to this, I could only find 4 that they said were significant. The Arbor Day for the tree designations, and I didn't write those others down, those other 3 down. I couldn't find them, actually.
I think the only significant one was 66, was 16,
16-inch DBH.
and then the other 2 were
I
12.
think that was staff's interpretation.
Right.
I guess really what I'm asking is, do you disagree with staff's interpretation? And if so, what are the criteria that you believe apply to the other trees?
I don't know. And then, while we're talking about trees, they took down on Jean Way, they just took down where the Lake Ridge High is, they took down most of those about 18 or more trees on that site. And the students went out and protested when they cut down one right near on the street. So you need to be aware there are feelings on development that people are really beginning to be concerned about the tree removal.
Yeah, well, we reviewed that case and nobody came to talk about the trees. There was nobody that testified in front of us that night. So,
Well, thank you for this opportunity.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ann. Okay, well, do you fill out a form? Okay. Well, he's,
He needs to fill it out.
oh, you did? Okay, well, I'll call you when I call you then, if I have one. I have a whole bunch more here. All right, so the next is another opponent. Let's hear from Walt Bentley. Is that you? Okay. I had 3 to guess from. How's that, huh?
Yeah, you're doing good.
You look like a
3 out
Walt
of
to
3.
me.
So basically, I've been in Lake Oswego since 1980. And
Well, can you leave your name and address, so?
Walt Bentley, 3112 Upper Drive, Lake Oswego, Oregon.
Thank you.
So like I said, I've been here since 1980. And the city, Lake City prides itself on trees. I see that when I drive into Lake Oswego in both directions, all 3 directions, 4 directions. And basically, I'm concerned about seeing all these trees coming down. On the main roads, I drive the area too, like you guys do. And I thought City of Lake Oswego takes pride in their tree city image. And I think that image is starting to go down because people are talking throughout the whole community. And everybody's saying it's all about greed. You know, it's all about business. I'm for business. I'm okay for development. But it just seems like it's all coming down in a way that is very destructive looking. And it's impacting the animals. And then I'd like to know about the canopy, if there's been a comparison from 2015 to 2000 19. Has anybody done a comparison of the canopy lately of Lake Oswego? Of, the trees coming down? I mean, that's part of Lake Oswego, is that people like coming here because of the trees. And then the same thing with, if you go to Beaverton Tiger, it's just like a desert over there. Super hot. You come to Lake Oswego, it's like 10 degrees cooler. And I think that if Lake Oswego wants to keep their image of city of the trees, they need to start enforcing the tree zone standards. And you look at Boone's Ferry, and I'm sure you guys kind of feel that way a little bit too about all this development and all these Doug firs coming down. Lake Oswego, you're losing the image. And Lake Oswego should take pride. When I came here, trees were prominent, so to speak. Trees, they took pride in that they tried to preserve the trees, but it's not that way anymore.
Walt, I'd like to say something that I think, to get a little bit of an explanation. What we do here in the Development Review Commission is we try to review development applications against the development code for the city of Lake Oswego.
Right.
And so it's not something that we as individuals make up in terms of how we feel about something. It's really our review of the code as it's written against the criteria. So we have specific criteria that we look at in terms of if somebody proposes a tree removal. For those kind of qualitative comments that you're making, it's really more of a matter for the city council and the planning commission. Those are the people that will modify the very code that we use to review these development applications against, so that, through your voice, they can, strengthen the tree code, so that when we actually see it, we can look at more things other than this very strict criteria that we're reviewing this one against. I just wanted to say that to you and others that may comment, that's really what our job is here, is to review these applications against the development code. So I hope that's clear.
And I'm kind of concerned about the enforcement of the tree fences. I've seen them being moved from one area to another after they cut down the tree, and then whoever is building in whatever lot, and then they decide, well, we're going to cut down this tree, because no one's going to know, because they keep moving those fences around. Who's enforcing that?
That, of course,
Who's watching that?
that's the city staff code enforcement.
And then all these heavy, big, super duper tractors are coming on these lots and everything. Who's, oversized equipment? Who's enforcing all that, the code? Who's watching that? Nobody. I mean, Boone's Ferry is just it's like a bomb that went off in the whole street, and you're just gonna cut all those trees down. And who's gonna get enjoyment out of that? For a bunch of sidewalks and a medium in the middle of the road, and then you're gonna have traffic? Who wants to see like a desert in the middle of the street with no trees anymore? And that's going back to your little project. That's an entranceway to Lake Grove. People see that when they drive into Lake Grove, down there where the co-op's gonna cut those trees. That's a big statement, as they say, when you come into Lake Oswego. And then you cut down more trees, and it's kind of like, who cares, But someone better start caring. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Walt. Thanks for those comments. Okay, next up, we have Pierre Zabrinski.
Good evening. My name's Pierre Zabrinski, and I live at 17647 Hill Way. And after listening to the city attorney, I believe, Evan Boone, are you the city attorney? Yes?
Deputy City Attorney.
And hearing the discussion here, I realize this is really kind of a waste of our time to come here and be opposed if we can't come up with a specific criteria that you need to make your decisions. I think the correct forum would probably be, like you said, going to a city council meeting and starting to mobilize to put pressure on the council to change the city code. I think I read somewhere just in the last 48 hours or 72 hours that maybe 350 petitions for killing the trees came to pass in the year 2018. And out of about that 350 applications, only 2 were refused. And that's telling me, man, we haven't got a chance. We've got to go to the city council. So I'm just going to go through what I thought I was going to say, and I am going to say, even though I realize it's kind of a waste of time in this venue right now, tonight, but I will continue to fight for the survival of these trees. Look, I felt like what I've been seeing, the killing of about a couple dozen trees at the local junior high, Lake Ridge, the 9 that are that we're talking about tonight, and another 130 on Boone's Ferry. It's like, God, what are we going to do? And I just feel like, listen, these 9 tonight that we're talking about, I'm here on their behalf. They're like my brothers and sisters. And I walked by there, and the only reason I saw the little sign that was about this big out there talking about what they call removal. And I'm going, who would see this sign? You have to walk right by it to be able to see it. So I guess one of my first questions right now is, who decided it would be one little sign that size? Why not 5 feet for everybody who's driving by to see and know what's going on? But I feel like these 9 trees are my brothers and sisters. They asked me to come here and speak on their behalf tonight. And they asked me to please remind you, don't call it a removal anymore. It's killing. You're killing these living trees. Not you in particular, but just the way the code is set up. These 9 beautiful trees are being yanked out of existence for a development. And it's like they're a nuisance. They're an annoyance. They're in the way. Get rid of them because we have a project, a business project, and this is what we're going to do to them. But please don't call them removal anymore. It's murder. And you're killing these trees. And they asked me to tell you, look, they've been around for all these years. They were here when the other businesses owned that property there. Nobody had to cut them down back then. Why does it have to happen now? Why do all 9 of them have to happen? Why can't we tell this business person here, Wilco Farms, please take your architects, go back and redesign this so you don't have to yank out 9 more trees. And it's just like death of 1,000 cuts magnified by millions all over the planet. Cut 9 here, cut 3 here, cut 5 here. And before you know it, what do we have here in Lake Oswego? We've got another Hillsborough or another Los Angeles in the making. These trees asked me to come here tonight to tell you there's different kinds of lines. There's the bottom line of the accountants and the bookkeepers. There's the surveying line, the right angle line of the architects and the surveyors. And there's the checkout line of the business owner of the store, the shopkeeper. But there's another line we should be thinking of, and that's the line, the lifeline on the palm of our hands that project up the top of our palm of our hands and through this chamber here and out into the future. One day when we're face to face with our grandchildren and they ask us, what did you do to give us a better world? And we can look them in the eye and we can say, you know what? I did something at the meeting about these 9 trees. And it was a magnificent thing that I did. I tried to do something to save these 9 trees from being killed. And it's another thing that I hope that you might be able to consider is that you know, when small groups of people like us get together and we're serious and we're committed and we try to do something for the world, it makes a difference eventually. Thank you. That's all I've got to say tonight.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, I have, like I said, I have no proponents, but I do have one that is checked as neither for nor against, and that's Ty Beckman, sorry.
Changed my mind on the way, so I'm almost against now.
Oh, you're an opponent now?
Yes.
Okay, well,
I just could
Ty, state your name and,
So I wasn't texting, I was taking notes, so.
okay.
My name is Ty Beckman. I live on 17500 Hillway, so I'm very familiar with the area. I moved here about 2 years ago. I've been around Portland because I married somebody from Oregon for like 20 years. And one of the reasons I moved to Lake Oswego was because of the old growth and what we all want to protect, the identity of the city. And I'm thinking, that's at stake. If we have codes that allow us to push back for more parking, but not for keeping the trees, there's something wrong. We should have not even a discussion about whether this garden center has to be that big in order to save the trees. It should be that this is the space you have, and this is what you have to make do. And we have that sharp argument and that line when it apparently comes down to parking, but not when it comes down to saving what's there. And for me, it's the old growth, the bigger trees that make the city beautiful. And we talk about mitigation trees, but these are like 5, 6 feet tall little trees, and I don't know whether I'll live long enough to see them actually grow that tall like the ones that we're cutting down. So I'm thinking it should be in all of our interests to keep the identity, and if we just taking down old growth trees and thinking we're mitigating that by planting new small ones, I don't think that's a fair deal. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty.
I got here late, can I say something?
Sure, just please give your slip up to the,
So, I went over and visited the site, oops, Nancy.
state your name and address, please.
Nancy Osborne, 1217 Laurel Street. I went over today and visited the site for the second time, and I really wish all of you could have gone over and visited the trees. I know one of you said you did, and that's great. But if you go there and you see the trees, you see how they're stationed, how they're positioned. This covered little area for the garden center, it could be changed. It could be moved a little bit. Tree number 67, the main leader is gone, so it's basically dead, so that tree needs to go. But 68, 68, 66, 68, 69 are healthy, nice firs. They have room to grow. They have room where their roots can extend out, which a lot of our urban trees don't have that space. Trees 59 and 58, they, 1 inch, and that would be a significant tree. Those could be saved. There's already a deep indentation there where the water garden can go. And if you go there and look at that site, you can see that those trees could be saved. And I think the architects need to take a look. And if they knew from the get-go that we are so strong about our opinions about saving the trees, the architects could have come up with an alternate plan to save these trees. Granted, they're not huge yet, but they will grow. They've been there for many years already. And this is a gateway coming into Lake Oswego. You come in on Boone's Ferry, you stop at the stoplight. If those trees are gone, there is no shade. There's no shade. When we have 103-degree temperatures this coming summer, like we did last year, it's going to be hot. It's going to be super hot there sitting in your car. These trees provide the shade. They provide the beauty coming into Lake Oswego, Lake Grove rather, and they don't need to go. Architects are smart people. They can come up with a different design. I've been to Wilco many times in Oregon City and in Canby, and just to be quite honest, parking lots, they haven't planted any trees around the parking lot areas. They've got a couple little maple trees, and I'm thinking, God, it'd be really nice to have some trees here for the shade for the people that park here. So Wilco, I love their products, I love their jeans and their boots and their hay for my horse, but their planning for landscaping needs to be up with 2019 standards. They need to be planting more native plants. And so I hope when they come up with their design for the landscaping that they include a lot of native plants around that area. But right now, if you've been to Wilco at the other places, go visit it. You'll see it's just kind of boring. You know, there are no trees, there's not very good plantings there. The garden center also can upgrade and offer more native plants. But getting back to this, I think again, if you can just go visit these sites and see these trees, you might maybe do a little bit different thinking here. I also recommend this, since you're deciding on the fate of so many living trees, I suggest you get this little book. It's called The Hidden Life of Trees. It will give you a lot of information about what goes on the 12 inches underneath a tree, how a grove of trees need to be kept together. A grove of trees, of 5 or more trees, are much stronger than 1 or 2 trees that are left remaining. They send out extensive root systems. Those root systems nurture the other trees of the same species. They provide stability for those trees when big windstorms come. A grove of trees is not going to fall down. 1 or 2 trees will. So you all who are deciding the fate of all these trees in our community, and I agree with, you know, you look at the type 2 tree removals on the website, and I went down and I counted last 2017, 2018, over 900 trees were taken down that year, type 2 trees. And that's even more now that's been taken down on Boones Ferry Road, the golf course, 5 beautiful fir trees on Country Club Road, all the trees taken down at the new site at the Lake Ridge Elementary School or middle school. It's happening everywhere, and it's happening so fast that we have to come together and we have to make some changes, because it's just not climate change, you know? It's not a hoax. It's just going to keep getting hotter and hotter, and we're going to need these trees to keep us cool. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a great stream of consciousness. Now we have the rebuttal from the applicant.
So, Todd Prager again, project arborist. So I've been talking with the owner and others on the project team. And we understand that the trees are not considered significant, but we feel that with some minor design changes, that trees 58 and 59 may be possible to retain by reconfiguring the rain garden, but we're gonna have to explore that option. The other trees are within the footprint of the proposed building, so there's not really an option to retain those trees, but 58 and 59 are certainly something that we can take a close look at.
Okay. Okay. Oh, you have a question? Sorry.
I didn't get to ask this before, because I forgot. On the outside retail area, are we going to be driving, are you going to be driving through from Jean Road into the parking lot?
Yeah, I don't think, you mean into the accessory lot? Is that the question?
The uncovered outdoor sales area?
Yeah, our intent, I think, is a drive-through, so we'll drive in from the parking area and out to the cross street. I don't know what that cross street is there. I guess it is Jean Road, isn't it? Yeah.
So you're going to be driving in?
In one side, I believe we've designed a gate onto Jean Road, but I'm not even sure. Sometimes we loop
Yeah, there's a
around.
gate there. There's a gate.
Yeah.
So it's going to be like a drive-through.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I'd like to make one final comment, I guess. So I really do appreciate everyone's comments around the trees, and appreciate your business, those of you that are shopping our stores now. And just wanted you to know that we definitely didn't go into this project with an intent to try and remove as many trees as possible. It really was what is just absolutely required for the store as far as floor space and space for that garden center area. So this comment from Todd that he thinks he might be able to save a couple trees for that rain garden is welcomed. And if we could save others and still have even adequate space for the garden center, we would do that. Our alternative really is probably not to open the store more so than have a smaller garden center. That's the problem. The economics just don't work without that minimum amount of space. So I wish they did, because I appreciate everyone's comments, but unfortunately, it doesn't. And hopefully, we can make a difference with a couple of them there.
Thank you. You have another, okay?
I just want to make a comment. Our commission interprets the rules that are given to us. If you don't like the rules, you're late. You're late to the party. You need to be in front of the planning commission. You need to be in front of the city commissioners. They just went through a tree, the new tree ordinance was just released. So you need to be involved. And we take the hits here for type 2 tree permits and development. These people are good stewards of their property and the development that they want to build or occupy. And we, as a group, have gotten lazy, and we're not going to the meetings where we should be to get the results that you desire. And I think tonight we have a really good, a pretty good project and a good owner who is listening to what you're saying and is willing to make changes if he can to save some trees. And I think that's admirable. We don't always do that, but you need to be a little more out in front. Still come here, but you need to get involved. Sorry for being on my soapbox.
All right.
Good
I had a
answer.
question. What involvement have you done so far in the tree scenario in Lake Oswego? What's your involvement?
No, we don't need to.
Can I say something?
What's that?
I have a comment.
Okay. Yeah, let's not get into a
Before we move into
conversation, yeah.
comments-
Yeah, let's move on to deliberations
Let's
so we can
complete
have.
the process, and then we'll move on.
Right, okay.
All right, is there any, are you closing the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any request to continue the public hearing for the opportunity to present additional evidence? Hearing none, does the applicant want to submit a final written argument which would delay the commission's deliberation? See you shake a head no. You may proceed with deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Randy, sounds like you want to go first.
No, perhaps the city attorney could review with us the analysis we go through to get us through the 6 points of what a significant tree is for purposes of determining if removal of a tree will have a significant negative
Be happy to.
impact.
Okay, it is, well, there's 4 criteria, and then criterion 3 has a lot of subsets. All right, so the first criterion is, was it proposed for purposes of development? Is removal proposed for purposes of development? Okay, was. Number 2 is whether removal would have a significant negative impact on erosion, soil stability, flow of surface water, protection of adjacent trees, or existing windbreaks. Okay, there's that. Number 3, and this is the one I think we're focusing in on, removal of the tree will not have a significant negative impact on the character or aesthetics of the neighborhood. This standard is met when removal of the tree does not involve, okay, and here's the 5 criteria with some subsets. If the tree, is the tree a significant tree? Now, a significant tree is defined as, Significant tree is a healthy, non-invasive tree over 15 inches in DBH that is considered significant in the neighborhood due to size, species, or distinctive character, or is the only remaining tree on the property. Okay? So that's the first of the 5 tests for criterion 3. Is it a significant tree? The second one,
So it has to be 15-inch DBA?
it has to be 15.
Or none of the other criteria on
Right.
that?
It's
Has to be
over
15
15,
inches. If
just
it
to be
was
clear.
I'm sorry.
Over 15.
Yeah, it has to be over 15 inches, okay?
Oh, okay.
If it's non-invasive, if it's an invasive tree, doesn't get a consideration there either. And if it's not in good health, doesn't matter, you don't go to that. Okay, so that's a significant tree with those 7
you.
sub-criteria. B, alterations to the distinctive features or continuity of the neighborhood skyline as viewed from all public streets and properties within 300 feet of the property. So, alteration of skyline. C, a tree that serves as a visual screen between a residential zone and an abutting non-residential zone, or between a low-density residential zone and a medium or high-density residential zone, or between a medium and a high-density residential zone. Okay, so there's no testimony about that. D, a street tree. A street tree is automatically considered that its removal would be a significant negative impact, which would then trigger the exception criteria analysis. And finally, does the tree removal result in greater than 50% of a stand of trees being removed? Okay, so that's it. Now, if any of those 5 criteria are met, and significant tree with its 6 subcomponents, then you look into the exceptions. If none of those criteria are met, you don't look at the exceptions. If they are met, then the exception, and there's 2 exceptions, one would cause damage to permanent viable existing structures or to infrastructure that can't be remedied through reasonable tree maintenance. And B, which we deal with most likely, is alternatives to tree removal have been considered and no reasonable alternative exists to allow the property to be used as permitted in the zone. In making that consideration, the city may consider alternative site plans or placement of structures for development purposes that would lessen the impact on trees so long as the alternatives continue to comply with other provisions of the Lake Oswego Code. So you don't have to ask for a variance, that sort of thing. So relative to the testimony tonight, the question is, in order to get to an alternative site analysis question, you'd have to find that one of the 5 tests are met for the first part of criterion 3.
The reference to the skyline, is that an independent criterion, or is that dependent on the over 15-inch
No,
DBA?
that's an alternative to the 15-inch criterion.
I did just want to mention that every year, the Planning Commission comes up with proposals to work on in the following year, and at the end of 2017, the Planning Commission did recommend to the City Council that the Planning Commission be authorized to take a look at a better coordination of the Community Development Code and the Tree Code, but the City Council did not authorize that. So that might be an avenue to approach both through the Planning Commission at the end of the year when it does its list of proposed projects for the following year, and also to express opinion to the City Council that it might be time to take a look at a better coordination of the Community Development Code and the Tree Code. That's just the observation I wanted to make.
So, quick question, Evan, a street tree.
You want a definition of a street tree?
Yeah, what is the definition of street tree?
Definition of a street tree, a moment. Street tree is a tree 1.5 inches or larger in diameter at breast height, or DBH, located within the public right-of-way, a pedestrian easement abutting a right-of-way, or within a street tree easement, or used to meet a street tree requirements for a prior development permit.
Okay, these are all outside the right-of-way, it looks like.
That's the finding of staff,
Okay.
if I understand it.
Just a quick question. Do we know if any of these trees proposed for removal were actually planted with the original development application?
I would assume that they all were.
Given the size, that was kind of my assumption.
Right.
The uniformity of size, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, the largest one is 17 inches. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It appears that way. I mean, I did not confirm that, but there was a requirement for landscaping. I did see a plan, a general plan, but I did not go through and check and see if they matched up to each of these trees.
Yeah, it's been 25 years since that site was built.
Right.
Thereabouts. And I was trying to remember what the site looked like before, and in my recollection, it didn't have as many trees, at least on that corner. When you drive by Boone's Ferry, it wasn't as treed originally as it is now. That was my recollection, but it's been a long time.
Okay. Any other thoughts or?
So on the,
Can the public
No.
ask any questions? at this
No, I'm sorry. At some point in time, I have to close the public hearing, so, sorry.
so I just wanted to point out a couple things. Let me say that some of the people that testified brought up some other applications, and I think two of the recent ones that we had, they came away with approvals and actually keeping more trees than they originally proposed. The junior high was one of them. I think we saved a tree or two on that one. And then another one was the townhome development on Boone's Ferry, where there are a number of trees that were saved. So just for the benefit of the people that are here, we do look for opportunities to save the trees, and we always appreciate when the applicants are willing to work with us to do that, even though we might not be able to require them by code, but we do look at that. So, and in this one, so this is in the staff report on page 17, there are 60 trees that are 6 inches or diameter, in diameter or more. And only 9 of those are being removed. And then they do have to mitigate for all of those trees. So just make sure everybody understands, there's 51 trees that they're not removing, just so everyone's clear on that. I understand that some of the Doug firs are the larger ones, and they're very visible, but staff goes through a pretty thorough discussion about that and didn't find any of them to be significant. And I don't think we've seen any evidence that would indicate these trees are significant and shouldn't be removed based on the code analysis. Let's check my notes here, see if I have anything else. I did note that there was some discrepancy between the listing of on the tree plan and the exhibits that were included. Some of the sizes of the trees were not matching up on the tree plan. I'm going to go with the tree plan for the correct diameters, but I don't think it changes our analysis. On the zoning issue, that's one that I struggle with a little bit. I mean, on one side, I think probably a conditional use permit is the right way to go. But given that this has been in retail use for so long, and staff wasn't able to confirm that there was a process that vested that retail use, but it's kind of a grandfathered use, I guess, in some ways. I think I'm willing to approve this as is. And if we need to have a condition in regards to if we need to revise the parking condition to allow them to, if we can, to allow them to come back with maybe a parking study, it sounds like maybe that would be a modification to the application as opposed to allowing us to condition.
It'd be a modification to an approved permit. They're asking
Okay.
for you to approve it as is, and they'll reduce the parking, or the sales area to meet the parking. And then if they want to expand the sales area, once, they can come back with a parking study.
Okay, and that would just be a staff level review at that point? Or would it come back to us?
Depends how you want to refer that.
Well, we always have discretion as to whether or not we refer it.
And that's why I was wondering if we said that they can keep the sales area and the lower number of parking spaces pending approval of a parking study by staff. That would, I think, simplify things for everybody if we can do that.
There's a chance if they have to reconfigure the parking so that they add spaces, and to do so means reduction of landscape area, which could violate that code criteria, right?
I don't think it does, because they're not changing of the landscaping within that. They're just going to fence off that area and use it for outdoor sales.
They're asking you to prove what you have. The modification would be to come in with a parking study that shows that they don't need the additional parking they would put in the outdoor sales area to meet the standard. So they would end up having what you see on the screen if they come with a parking study that shows their demand is less.
Right.
Right. I'm just trying to make it easier for them to do that, if they can, if staff reviews the parking study and agrees with them.
Well, if you want, if you want to require them to come back to the DRC with a review of a parking study, if they ever file for a modification again, that would be a condition.
That's not what I'm saying.
If you
Is there a
don't-
way to avoid the modification process is really what I'm asking.
Well, no, there isn't, but it could be a staff level review for the modification.
Okay, if you don't think there's a way we can avoid the modification process, then.
Not
we'll-
without some evidence about what the parking study is, so.
Okay,
Well, my point was if they have to if the parking study does not indicate that they can reduce the number of spaces. And so they have to put the number of spaces that code requires. And then to do so would mean the reduction of the uncovered outdoor sales area. Then, that may not be adequate for their purposes. And therefore, the only thing else they're looking at is some other way to squeeze spaces in, which would maybe reduce landscaping, which may trigger criteria from the city to say, we need to have the DRC look at it again.
Or
That's
it
what
could
I know there's a lot of
trigger-
suppositions in there, but.
yeah, like
but
I said
that's
earlier, it could trigger non-conforming upgrades to the parking if they start messing around with the existing parking configuration, removing landscape islands, that sort of thing, potentially. So just to be clear, if we approve this with the condition A1, I think it is, as is, they are required to move the fence back and provide more parking.
Correct.
We don't know what that's going to look like. And that's one of my concerns, but we just have to rely on staff to make sure that they've got enough room for maneuvering, they have the correct number of parking spaces, and whatever setbacks they need.
That's clear
Or
and
not.
objective, for the new standards that would be applied to clear and objective.
Or not, we don't have to rely upon them. We can.
We can ask
condition
them to.
say that we want to look at it again. I mean, that's.
I mean, we could reopen the hearing and ask them to come back with, with that, but I don't know that we need to do that.
Well, no, I'm just, we're just trying to get the rules clarified here, that's all. I'm not trying to offer an opinion other than to say that these are scenarios which we might have to, the city staff may decide to come back. Anyway, does anybody else have any comments, or are we ready to entertain a motion, or?
I just have one comment, and I'm encouraged by the applicant's ability, willingness to possibly modify the proposed rain garden, or, I'm not the stormwater rain garden person by any means, but I was just looking at the plan side, I was like, well, reconfigure it, or move it, or change it, or do something for these trees. And it struck me that this is a business in which they're trying to get people to come and buy fertilizer and trees and plants and garden centers, only to have to cut down trees in order for people to come and do that. I just thought it just struck me as kind of strange or ironic. I don't know if that's the right word. So I was encouraged that the powers that be would maybe look at it a little bit differently and tell their engineers and architects, modify the rain garden, and we can save the trees, and the people who love trees will be happier and buy more fertilizer and plant stock from our garden center, so.
Right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
On that point, I just want to be procedurally correct on this. The applicant has asked to remove the 9 trees. Now, the applicant has said in rebuttal, well, we'll try to save 2 additional trees, to remove 2. If the commission approves, because they find that the evidence authorizes the removal of these, you'd be authorizing removal of the 9. Now, whether the applicant doesn't have to use the full authority, I guess that's a quick way to say it. They could remove 7 trees as long as what they end up building is in substantial conformance, i.e. the placement of the rain gardens doesn't affect something else, doesn't eat into the parking, something like that. They could do it by by substantial conformance, they could reduce the number of trees by 2. So, point is you would be you'd be authorizing the removal of the 9 trees requested. The applicant may, if they find that it's able, to not use all that authorization. But that's up to the applicant.
I understand. Part of the stormwater design that we're dealing with here, I know we can't introduce new evidence that it could be redesigned, we can't do that. But to me, should be some emphasis by when city staff reviews these applications to try to look at the stuff like that, so we don't have to, be faced with, looking at it just like we are and say, boy, you just move that rain garden a little bit and you could save 2 trees, Because we really have our hands tied right now. We have to just look at it and say, okay, we'll have to approve the 9 because we can't suggest any other modifications that
Well,
are
that's it.
obvious on the,
Staff is in this, staff is in the same position. If an applicant files an application that meets the criteria, the staff must recommend approval. Now, if they could design it some way differently, well, we don't know all the factors that go into, of course, in a design.
Right.
And nor do we have the authority to tell people how to redesign if it doesn't, if it meets the criteria, we're kind of done.
yeah, no, I agree. I just that in this case, it's more obvious, so.
So, Evan, just to clarify, I want to make sure I understand, condition A1 requires that they come in with a plan, should we approve this as is, that are the same or substantially similar to the site plan, et cetera, et cetera. So does that give enough leeway to modify the rain garden in order to save the trees? Or were you saying that maybe we need to?
It does, as long as it doesn't impact some other code requirement.
Okay,
So,
but like
again,
as long as they're not impacting parking or,
If they move the rain garden
landscape
into the parking
percentages,
lot, that would be a
yeah.
problem.
exactly, exactly. Okay, I just wanted to be clear about that. I'm ready to make a motion unless you have something else to say.
I was just going to say, guys, I made my point about the trees. I appreciate it. I think the client, or Wilco, has heard our opinion, and I hope they follow it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I move to approve LU 19-0011 with conditions as modified as suggested by staff.
Second.
Polson,
Before I vote, I just would like to say that, again, that we're bound by the code, and I would encourage everybody to participate in the process, the planning commission, city council, and I want to also emphasize that if we were to, if some of us, our hearts were that we don't want to see the removal of these trees, and would deny the application, there's a high probability that that decision would be overturned by the city council. And then again, if that was still the wrong decision, it could be overturned again by the Land Use Board of Appeals. And so we're, to stave off the process of a long legal battle, that's why we want to make the correct decision that's consistent with the law, the land use code. And that's why I'm voting yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Shear,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Arthur,
Yes.
All right, this is a tentative decision by the commission and written findings brought back to the commission on June the 3rd, 7 PM.
I do not believe we have any other items on June 3rd. In fact, I know we don't. So the commission has the option, if you wish, to meet earlier at 6 PM for the purpose of adopting the findings.
I don't think I'm going to be in attendance, so I'm leaving the following day, so.
That works for me. In fact, I'd prefer 6 PM.
I'm out.
I'm 6 PM.
What's that?
I'm good with 6.
Okay, there's 2. Okay,
Three.
there's 3.
6 is tough on me, so I may have to do it by phone or whatever. So
You may call in.
Okay.
That would work.
Okay, that would give us 4 then. Well, David could call in too, even though he's leaving the next morning.
I'm going to stick with what I said. All right.
No problem.
And we have no other business?
So 6 o'clock, is that?
6 PM? Yes. No other business. I would just note, in terms of the schedule update, the June 17th is another meeting date. We do believe we will likely have 1 or 2 applications. We don't know for sure because some things just came in and we need to determine if the application is complete. We're required to provide 20 days' notice, so we have enough time to make that hearing date. So I will keep you updated, but as of now, it looks like it's possible we may have a couple of items for June 17th.
Oh, I can change my mind then, right? Anyways, no other business, we're adjourned. Thank you.